So yeah, Jane Fonda was phenomenal. Which, I knew that Jane Fonda was cool, and I knew that I appreciated her,
Mm,
but to see her in this format gave me a new appreciation of her.
hmm
Just to hear her talk and just to be so cool and interesting, and just to hear a synopsis of different life events and
hmm
movements that she's been involved in was really cool. And
Yeah.
she gave some interesting perspectives to different movements. Like she gave props to the current BLM movement for being, first of all, one that was started by a woman of color or black women in particular, but also non-binary folks, and one that she described. Oh man, I think my mouse was working for a second and then was not again. One that she described as being very joyful with like she went to a presentation that was like very organized where there were different topics introduced by different speakers, but then also singing and dancing and what she described as a lot of joy. And speaking to the folks who had uh, set up the program, they were saying that that's very intentional and that's like a big part of bringing people into your movement is them enjoying it and wanting to be part of the movement. And she kind of set up a juxtaposition with some of the movements she had been involved with back in the days that were not so inviting. She was saying the Panthers, she did not accuse the Panthers of being so joyful in their work. And she did acknowledge that they were up against it for sure, and that they were really up against some strong powers, but she did
'Cause
not.
she worked with them, right?
Yes, yep, she did.
Yeah.
The moderator slash our executive director, I think, had mistakenly given her credit for being part of the civil rights movement, and she said, no, I came onto the scene late. I certainly wasn't. She said I was filming Barbarella at the time. Um, However, by the 70s,
That's awesome.
yeah, by the 70s, I went from a hedonistic lifestyle in France to being told about some of the horrors of Vietnam by soldiers themselves, which she found that hard to believe. And then she was given a certain book, which she called a short and sweet book. I don't remember the name of it, but I think it details the horrors acted upon a certain village in Vietnam and what
Hmm
role we played in that. And then
Yeah.
she said her newfound friends told her about the history of France and just different, just the history of Vietnam. And she came back to the United States and became an ardent, supporter of other troops and families who were now against the war, and of course against the war herself. So I found it interesting that it wasn't just this general I was an anti-war activist, but actually an anti-war activist aligning herself with other soldiers and the like who were also against it. Because sometimes those stories are more poignant because you can't just point and say, "Oh, you're against the troops." That's like, well, no, I'm actually standing with troops who have actually been affected by this, and we're not simply just using them as pawn pieces and propaganda pieces. These are real people who were affected by this, who actually educated me, and now I'd like to educate you. So
Mm.
I found her to be very, very educating and very great at speaking truth to power. Very self-effacing as well. Um, just about being honest about not being educated on certain things in certain times of her life, and
hmm
then being educated.
She's had an amazing life. And she
Certainly.
was like born. I mean, she was born. She was a child of Hollywood. You know, she
Hmm.
was born into that life, born into that privilege, and spent a lot of her young years, like just fraternizing with like a lot of other like really rich and like very famous celebrities, and moving amongst that crowd, and living life and being alive. But at the same time, she's also used her privilege for good for the vast majority of her life. And
Certainly. Certainly.
one of the things that's always amazed me about her, like, a lot of people have become famous, but whenever I've heard her in interviews, she is so present. She's
Hmm.
so alert and like aware of like her, like everything around her in a way that like, it's really rare to see like just how, like, like a lot of times like people are like when they're talking, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but like they'll like when they'll think about something, they'll like look up or they'll like look
Right.
up.
Right. Right.
Like she's very direct, like
Hmm.
she's very here, and she always keeps eye contact. She's really present and knows herself,
Hmm.
and that's always amazed me.
Yep.
Like it's really inspiring to like she knows like who she is, and she's always known who she is and what she wants, and that's like incredible. And I just so admire her, not just for her not just for her film career, but for everything that she does. I think she's fantastic.
Yeah, and she's
um
still very involved as well.
yeah, I was going to ask you, did she, now was she just talking to like working families party, or was it like was it a number of like different political parties that she was speaking
So
to?
yeah, I was surprised there were only like 28 of us on the call. It was
Wow.
it was mostly working families party, and then a few folks who were running for office.
It was like
I think
was it like a nationwide call?
it was a nationwide call.
Yeah,
Yep.
I would imagine so. Yeah.
Actually, it was a nationwide call, but kind of centered in, I think, our California office,
Right. Okay.
since that's where she's out of. And
Yes. She's also 82 and looks incredible.
she does. She does.
Like,
I was thinking 78 or something, but yeah, she was. Yeah, she looks incredible. She does.
I mean,
Hmm.
she was lucky that she had that face and that figure, but like she's like notably taken care of herself, like
Yes.
for many. So yeah, again, um, I like queening out over here. Don't mind me.
Hmm.
Um,
And
but that's amazing. Tell me, no, but that's amazing. This is
she's
incredible.
got she's got a phone bank going that's made like 1 million calls so far. I think they want to make 1 million more. She was talking about Pennsylvania, how crazy it gets over there. That thanks to who.
In what way?
Well, they have armed people intimidating people at the polls.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Pennsylvania is a swing state, and I can't. You never know what's going to happen out there, and
Yeah.
uh,
That's why I'm
crazy
making
though.
calls.
They have armed. They have people with guns, like intimidating, like people going up to the. That's one of my fears though. Like I worry. Like actually, no, that concerns me now. Like because I'm planning to vote like in person.
Yeah. Well, you're not gonna worry about that in New York. That's for sure.
No, but I mean, I sometimes do work. Like I'm not saying that it would happen, but like I recently I've been wondering what if someone says something like if I'm like as I'm leaving the poll, like what if someone is like, who did you vote for, or something like that? Do you know what I mean? I don't know. Again,
Yeah, that's not gonna happen. That's not gonna happen in New York.
I'm not saying that it will, but yeah, it's just one of those things that I guess I don't know. I just became I don't know, more cognizant of the fact that goes on, and so I was just
It's
wondering
very unfortunate.
how I would react if that happened to me.
Yeah. Like, who'd you want me to vote for?
I'm concerned I wouldn't be very diplomatic.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's amazing. So she just, excuse me, I don't want to flash anybody. But I just, that's just so.
We're not that kind of show.
No, I know we're not. No, we're not. And yeah, it's good. I'm not, yeah, I'm decent. But in any event, I'm just so, when did you find out this was happening?
I think like earlier today.
Okay.
Yeah, I think earlier today.
Yeah. Um, this
And
is,
then it wouldn't let me. And then when I tried to press the button to put it on my calendar, it said like you're no longer invited to this event or something, like it gave you some kind of error. So I let the person who sent it know, and they're like, "What?" And they kind of like fixed it for me. So it's all good.
um,
But she talked about not being afraid and like putting her body on the line was, what they did in Vietnam and what she was
mhm.
willing to do for people trying to vote and stuff like that. You know.
Yeah, no, I remember when she said, I remember when watching an interview with Oprah, and when she said that she, I think she was in her early 70s when this happened, and she got breast cancer, and she said she wasn't afraid of dying, and I was like, uh, and that's really deep.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Oh,
really deep.
another deep thing she talked about was, I think she got a flyer or something, and it had
Hmm.
questions on there like, are you taking care of yourself? How are you feeling? And she had never been asked those things before. And then she realized that
What flyer was this?
it might have been a BLM. It might have been when she was talking about BLM.
Oh,
Um, and the fact that it was a women-centered movement, that women have had to, that women have been concerned about folks taking care of themselves.
what's a
And
women-centered movement? Black Lives Matter?
yes, well, that it was founded by women.
Oh, yes. Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
But she just like went on this whole thing talking about, um, the fact that women uh, have depended on like this inner connectiveness, like dating back to like, you know, uh, uh, hunter gatherer societies, and like depending on one another, and like the men were like trying to go out and hunt meat, oftentimes very unsuccessfully. And like most people don't know that like those societies didn't really eat too much meat because it was often very unsuccessful. So it often was like the gathering and stuff. Uh, it was the women like being the providers and depending on each other
Hmm.
to provide. And she just made this connection between, when you look at book clubs, it's often women, and sewing circles, and like different kind of
Yeah.
things that where folks depend on one another, and that's how like folks evolved. I mean, she made it sound a lot more interesting, and
I mean,
made more sense of it.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Women, I mean, have definitely been far more responsible for the socialization of the human species than men
Yes,
have.
yes, yeah. She spoke about, yes, yep. She certainly spoke about that. Yeah, she certainly spoke about that
Yeah.
for sure.
Yes. That's absolutely true. Um,
Oh, and she's got a
yeah.
book. She's got a book out. I think I'll check out if I
Oh,
get a
wow.
chance. What's
I
that?
absolutely, no, I mean, I absolutely will. I feel like I'm on this tear of like okay, awesome, like revolutionary women, like writing books, so that I could just finish a book by Patti Smith, so I may as well go
Oh,
into
okay.
Jane Fonda next.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, for real.
that's amazing. Wow. So so this was just very sudden. She contacted somebody like what this morning and was like, "Hey, I want to talk to you all tonight," or something like that.
That's a good question. I mean, I know that someone in our organization who works out in Cali put it together, and I don't know why, I just
Mhm.
suddenly got the invite for it, but I saw
Yeah,
it.
did you actually speak to her?
I did not actually speak to her. No, I was going to try to sneak in a hello at the end, but but I didn't.
I
No, I
hear
didn't.
you. I
Yeah,
don't blame you.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I didn't actually speak to her, but I mean, it's interesting that you say that because when I saw that there's only 28 of us in there, I'm like, man, this is not one of those huge Zoom calls. Like ostensibly there could be. We
No,
could have
no,
like
that's not
asked
right.
some questions.
One would think, I mean, somebody with her clout could
Yeah,
easily could have, uh, you know, there. I mean, there could have been like hundreds of people on that call, but
sure.
it would
And
have
who knows? Maybe that's like
would
maybe
have
this
crashed.
was a maybe this was a last minute thing, and maybe the fact that we had
Probably that
maybe
makes
the
sense.
fact that we had
Actually.
28 people was like a testament to like how quickly.
Yeah,
Hey, can you put something together?
that's a good point. That's a good point. That's a good point because if it had been more time, a lot of more people would have dropped whatever they were doing.
Yeah, exactly. Pour it in.
um,
I know. Yeah, you saw. I dropped. I was like, hey guys, I got this thing that just kind of popped up.
why didn't you send me the Zoom link?
Yeah, I would have. I think I barely got it myself. But yeah, it was cool.
Oh,
It was
that's
cool.
amazing. That's
But
amazing.
yeah,
I would have reeled it in and tried not to queen out and have been appropriate for the situation.
yeah,
I have occasion. Yeah. I'm usually calm and collected when I meet like famous people, but like with somebody like that who's not just famous but who's someone I really admire,
hmm
that would have been a little bit more difficult. So, but I would just try to be an adult about it. But
right.
yeah. So no, all my friends and family are like, yeah, they're like begging me for details. I'm gonna have to like wait for this.
Oh,
I'll
so
get
the
back.
other thing too, that just tells you how interested I was in what she was saying was it made me actually want to take notes, which is not always,
That's yeah.
my go-to in Zoom calls. But
No.
um, so some of the things that stuck out that she said was seeing Lily White folks are now marching with BLM, something like you wouldn't have seen in like the 60s, right? Like where the black movements were more militant and like she said, like more standoffish, where now it's like
I
there's
think,
more
yeah,
intersection and
I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to make, uh,
shoot, you just froze on me.
oh
Damn it.
no.
Oh, you're back. Sorry.
Okay.
I've been having issues today.
I was going to say, I'm not going to speculate on a lot of those reasons. I would say one of the reasons is probably because the 60s, it was a really hot time. And I think a lot of I'm sure like a lot of white people were not not as many white people were supportive necessarily of the cause as they are now pre-civil rights. But I'm also willing to bet that there were a lot of white people who were supportive of it. And
Sure.
I'll bet that probably some of them may have been afraid to march with them for a variety of reasons. Fear of getting arrested, maybe fear that they wouldn't have been accepted by some of the black leaders who were in it because they
Definitely.
So that's really interesting, but she's absolutely right. It's the temperature has changed.
Yeah, and yeah, you're definitely right. I mean, there's cases of people specifically asking, and people like Malcolm or other folks specifically saying no.
Right.
Whereas later on, some of those attitudes change. Like specifically Malcolm, later would say it was all good.
That was such a anyway. No, I mean, you know what I mean, right?
What's
Maybe
that?
I don't know. No, I mean what happened to Malcolm because of essentially because he changed his mind and his attitude and adopted a more open and embracing policy, and his supporters turned on him.
Oh,
That was horrible.
yeah. Yeah.
That was devastating. And it was a result of his trip to Mecca. Like,
Yes. Yeah.
so,
I mean, I guess I didn't know so much about his supporters turning on him. I mean,
well, I mean, he was assassinated by some of his like supporters who felt that he had betrayed them.
right. Well, that was a bigger issue than inviting white folks into the fold in his trip to Mecca. The problem with the Nation of Islam was there was a lot of jealousy that Malcolm. We remember how Malcolm, how what a charismatic speaker he was, and how much people loved him. Um, they were jealous of Malcolm the whole time, and so and then not only was he charismatic and loved, and not only were they jealous of him, but then he would go out and say very controversial things, like what he said about JFK. I think that was like that might have been the last straw. They did not like that at all. So for as militant as the Nation of Islam was, they also wanted to be like loved and like, they wanted that political capital. And for this guy to be out there, quote unquote, representing them and to piss that many black people off. Black people loved JFK. Like
Yes, they did.
whether he was white or not. And so for Malcolm to say chickens coming home to roost and all that stuff, they were pissed because he was not supposed to like say that.
Right.
And they warned him even before, like they saw it coming. So they even warned him before he said it, but Malcolm being Malcolm, he couldn't help himself. So yeah, I think the assassination I think was much bigger than opening the tent and letting white folks in. I think he was brewing, that was brewing well before with all the death threats, and they did him dirty. I mean, the guy was like their bread and butter, and they didn't even take care of his family, and they were living in poverty, and then they basically kicked him out of the house that they were, I guess, had put him up in, and they did the guy dirty. Like anyone else would have been like some rich, like at Malcolm's level, that guy would have been like some big time minister. Not saying that they were like that, but you know what I mean. He would have at least been. He would have at least been comfortable.
I do. Yeah, that was. Yeah, that was messed up.
Yeah. The other thing that she said that I took to was she said Trump isn't running against Biden. This was based on, I think, watching the debates. Trump isn't based on watching the debates.
All right.
Trump isn't running against Biden, but against the democratic process. Basically like saying that, because I remember like how I felt watching that, and I tried to describe it, like how frustrating it was watching this person just like interrupt the whole process, and it's like, would you please just shut up so we can like get through this debate and like hear the ideas and thoughts and whatnot.
Will you just shut up, man?
Yeah. Would you just shut up, man?
Yeah, I don't really put much stock in political memes. I think they're distracting, and they preach to the choir. But the Obama Biden memes have been pretty great.
Yeah. But what she touched on was that was the point of what he was trying to do. He was trying to frustrate you. Like he was trying to be disruptive. Like he wants people to tune out. Right? So like, his performance is based on trying to like get you to tune out, be kind of frustrated, and hopefully go so far as saying, man, I don't even know about this election. It looks like it's a circus or something. Right? Because that's like his best strategy is to just like piss people off. So that was interesting to me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's absolutely true. Yeah, that's absolutely true. That's really, yeah, that's really profound what she said. I think she's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, for
Uh,
sure.
I just got a news flash. I just got a news prompt that said Kellyanne Conway has now tested positive too.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh, and then Jane started saying things like, uh, coronavirus may have been like the greatest thing sent to the left or something. Um,
I honestly, I statements like that make me nervous. But
I
go
know,
on.
I know.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
well, because I think she's just trying to say that it shows us how disposable like we are to the right and to Trump, and it just kind of like drew this line in the sand and like kind of exposed him for like how callous
Uh,
he
all
was.
all right. Okay. You were there. I wasn't, so I can't speak to that. All I can
Yeah,
say is I personally don't think it's a good idea to say any sort of like deadly pandemic is
I
like
was
a
a little,
positive thing.
I was a little surprised. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie.
I think that's her radical side coming out right there.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well, then it gets a little interesting
Oh,
because
y'all are actually here.
we're here. Then she swung to the other side and started
you just missed Jane
talking.
Fonda, Itch.
Yeah,
Say again?
You just missed Jane
you just
Fonda.
missed
She
Jane
was
Fonda.
off the call.
Yeah, we had
Yay
her on
me.
for a little bit.
Extremities Jane Fonda or senior citizen Jane Fonda?
Activist Jane Fonda.
Oh, okay.
And then she started going in against socialism a bit.
She went in against socialism.
Yeah,
Okay.
and said that she was more for a very strictly regulated capitalism, not to give up on capitalism just yet.
That's cool. I still mind.
You would have loved
I'm gonna come back on in about 10 minutes.
10 minutes. We may be on with Emily's link by then.
That's fine. I'm just at a friend's house on the porch, and I didn't know if you guys were actually on when I clicked the link, and I see that you are. So
Are y'all drinking lemonade over there? Are y'all drinking lemonade?
Oh, he pieced out.
Oh, damn.
Okay. No, that's interesting. Yeah, no. Well,
so,
I
sorry,
also
my phone rang, which kind of toned me out. But I will be back on in 10 minutes.
Okay.
Oh,
Cool.
okay.
See you in a bit. But that's actually pretty cool because I also am a proponent of carefully regulated capitalism. So I like that. I do.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was kind of surprised. I like almost didn't really know where it came from. I'm like, okay. I'm like, I guess talk.
Yeah,
how you feel.
Yeah, that's interesting that she brought that up, but especially to the Working Families Party. But
yeah, and then she made a joke about, well, if you have to kick me out now,
that's really,
I understand.
That's hilarious.
But then that allowed, our executive director Maurice to say, no, like these conversations are what make us like who we are, and like these debates are great for us to wrestle with.
She would so not be bothered. Actually, it's funny. She was recently on Watch What Happens Live with Andy Cohen, and she's so not bothered. When he brought up the fact that Barbara Streisand, in like a few years ago, basically said that she turned down a bunch of movie roles that Jane Fonda starred in and like made her name in. Mm-hmm. So Barbara Streisand was basically like, I gave Jane Fonda her career. And so Andy Cohen was just like, so what do you think of that? And Jane Fonda just said, well, she has to say things like that to prop herself up because she's had like a really tough life.
Wow.
I was like, she was so not, I love her. She's so not bothered. It was amazing.
Yeah. That is.
I love, yeah, it's fantastic. But yeah, so that's really interesting that she brought that up. But you know, but I like that.
Okay, so this is where it came from. We were talking about. Oh, so speaking of questions, right? You know, there's only 28 of us, but we didn't get to talk to her because there were questions being fielded from an audience. I don't know where these questions were coming from, but I guess because we were on Facebook Live. That's what it was. So there were questions being fielded from an audience. And one of the questions was, what's an issue that's not really being brought up in the elections? And she kind of struggled with that question. And she was like, well, I mean, climate change is an important issue, but I think that is being brought up. I'm not really sure. And then somehow she got into what was wrong with socialism, saying that she's seen pits and just horrible environmental conditions in socialist countries. And yeah, so, you know, I mean, you know, Maurice didn't debate with her. He said, you know, that's great. We want all types of ideas, you know, in the Working Families Party, and that's what kind of makes us awesome, is like struggling and debating these ideas. So I thought that was cool.
It is really cool, and that's a really interesting point that she brought up. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, I always struggle with, because I'm not like super knowledgeable on this stuff. You know, I'm always curious, but I always feel like people conflate a few different things. Like, I know when it comes to communism, I guess it's not just like the economy, but it's the way the country is actually run by the government. And when you mix economies and government, there can be a lot of corruption involved. But I feel like socialism, you know, socialism doesn't have to have anything to do with a government per se. It could just be the way an economy is run. Not to say that that's not what happens, but like, to me, it's like to blame socialism for environmental degradation is to say, well, like, who was running the government? Like, is it some uh, you know, dictator who is like running things? Is it, obviously she didn't shit on social democracy,
Right.
but to me it's just like, I don't know, maybe I'm just confused. I always think of like socialism as a way to fund programs that everyone needs, and that really wouldn't have anything to do with a nation not paying attention to its environment. Like, if anything, that often happens with capitalism, because it's like companies want to make as much money as possible and not, you know, have any, you know, not be held accountable unless it's a strictly regulated, you know, capitalist kind of thing.
Well, yeah. Well, the thing about it is that I think where a lot of like people who advocate for socialism get pissed off is that they're angry that this country seems to get socialist when it comes to helping bail rich people out, but not poor people.
Yeah.
So
No, very true.
And when I say I support the free market with regulations, I mean that all the way. So if a big company is corrupt and does a lot of bad stuff with their money and like financial swindling or embezzling or whatever like that, like with the big banks when they were set to fail and the government was like, no, we need to bail them out because a lot of people were going to lose their jobs. I'm like, that really sucks.
Oh shit, you froze.
The government doesn't want me repeating my controversial ideas.
That always seems to happen when it gets.
No, I really feel
ideas.
like the bank, I would have felt sad for the people that lost their jobs, but like let the banks fail. Like they, you know what I mean? Like they were the ones who made like all these bad decisions, and like, you know, if any of them like, you know, painted their yachts or whatever it was, or lined their own pockets while you know, cheating out the taxpayers, but they made bad decisions. you know, if the banks threatened to go belly up, that was their fault. They should have
Right.
went belly up. So why we should not have to bail them out? We shouldn't have had to bail them out. You know, why would we have to pay? Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. It didn't make sense to me. I thought it was, socialism. Again, it's socialism for the rich. So if you're not going to do it if you're not going to help people out who need the help financially at the bottom, don't do it at the top either.
No, that's what really sucks. It's like whenever we get into these problems, then, you know, help out all the poor people if you're going to dump money into anything. But yeah, it's ridiculous when these folks get bailed out. It really is. Because then as soon as we want like free education or healthcare, then all of a sudden it's too much money, you know?
Right.
And meanwhile, we're like funding our military to the point where we can only go to war with ourselves because no one else is like nearly as well funded as we are.
Yeah, we did that, and we did that once. It wasn't really fun. But
going to war with ourselves.
Yeah, but then wars are never fun.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That is true.
Yeah.
It's true.
But sadly, it was necessary. I mean, it's sad that it came to that, but that's, you know, that's what happened. I mean, so.
And you're talking about the East Coast versus West Coast war, right?
Of course, I'm talking about the East Coast, West Coast.
The Tupac Biggie.
Tupac, Biggie, and then what was the other one? Ja Rule and 50 Cent. Was that the other one?
Well, yeah, that was more of a regional scuffle. That wasn't. Yeah, that wasn't the big war.
That's just too bad. All right.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's been good talking to you.
It's been a delight as always. So I'll see you in a minute.
All right. See you soon. Peace.
Peace.